whatever. So I think I'm going to rant and rave about how terrible DeSantis is for 15 minutes. Is that okay with y'all? I think is this a safe space to do that? Can I do that?
You can take more time, actually.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that's it. So DeSantis sucks. Great talk, y'all. This was great. But really, and so when I think about this, after election day last year, there were lots of Zoom calls, right? Everyone was asking the question, what happened? What went wrong? How did Florida seem to draw closer to Trump when we elected Joe Biden as president, right? And so lots of questions, lots of people kind of in this posture asking who's going to be our Stacey Abrams in Florida. And all of those questions are valid, right? Because we have a lot of work to do. Again, like I said, we're proud of the work that you all are doing, but there's still substantial work that has to be done in Florida to finally get us to flip blue. And I think when I get this question often of like, what happened? Why didn't Florida, turn blue? Why didn't we bring it home for Joe Biden? My immediate answer always, y'all, is that we didn't mobilize. We didn't, continue to organize. And even though COVID struck us at a time in the midst of an election year, the Republicans out-organized us. While it was probably, of course, a danger to the folks who they had on the doors, they continued to interact with voters. I'm super proud, again, of the work that happened in Hillsborough. We shifted gears almost instantaneously by ensuring folks were signed up to vote by mail. But across the state, a lot of those efforts weren't happening. Again, voters didn't know there was an election, or they weren't registered in time. They weren't registered to vote by mail. And so that really caused a detriment across the state. And quite honestly, I think that, COVID for a lot of people, again, caused kind of this barrier of having conversations with folks. But I think that really should have drawn us nearer to voters, right? One example, Representative Rayner, this is her first time in the House. When she filed to run actually this time last year, and then immediately thereafter, we were struck by a global pandemic. And so right when she filed to run for public office, she shifted her campaign operation. So becoming a hub, because her district incorporates 4 counties, inclusive of Southern Hillsborough County, she shifted her operation to be a COVID almost command center. So what do you need? Do you need masks? Do you need supplies? And that's rooted in relational organizing. How do you build relationships with folks and voters on the ground who need access to care and access to quality services that the government can provide? And that's something that I'm really proud of to have worked on and helped her get elected. And it's a model for how we continue building substantial relationships with folks in our community. And again, I think if we would have taken that model that we saw kind of Representative Rayner do and others across the state, that we would have had deeper relationships with folks in Florida and probably would have seen a different outcome. So we have to organize all the time. It doesn't start a couple months out before an election. It starts now. It starts with us having these conversations with folks, seeing what their needs are, and going from there. I think another reason why we lost is because of lack of coordination. I probably, if we went around this Zoom call and each named an organization that does this work on the ground, we would name a different organization. The good thing is that's great, because we need all of us in this fight to actually flip Florida blue and move towards progress. But on the other side, what's problematic is because we have groups like this one doing work. We have the party overall, the state party doing work, and then these individual C3, C4 grassroots organizing groups doing work as well. But that means there was a lack of coordination between what those efforts are. How many of y'all went to a phone bank or showed up on a Zoom, or there was conflicting GOTV going on at the same time? All of those things, like, we have to better coordinate our efforts so that we're not being wasteful with them. As you all know, volunteers' times are precious. So how do we make sure we capitalize on that and get folks to sign up, get them mobilized to organize? And that was a significant gap last year here in Florida. Lots of folks doing the same thing or assuming that they're doing the same thing, and those things actually aren't happening when it comes to direct voter contact. So we as a party have to do better about building those relationships with those C3, C4 grassroots organizations in our communities to make sure that we're supporting them and vice versa, because that's how we make sure that resources are effectively being used for direct voter contact. I think also, we spent money ineffectively, right? So we all know that COVID was a problem, and it again impacted how we did our work. But what does that mean? That means every campaign shifted from doing door knocks and investing money in field, and all of them sunk that in mailers and digital, right? I'm sure everybody saw a digital ad on Facebook every time that they logged on. And again, we had to get creative. As a consultant, I understand that you had to find new creative ways to get in front of voters, especially with so many campaigns that were on their ballots, issue-based campaigns, candidate campaigns, up and down the ticket. But again, how do we effectively utilize the resources in our state? Does that mean each campaign sinks $15 million to send one ad to Donna about voting Democrats up and down the ballot? Is that an effective use of our money and our resources? I don't think so, right? And so, but again, that goes back to coordination. How do we have these conversations with our partners about what's going on, trusting each other enough to share those ideas, those plans, to make sure that we're effectively reaching the folks that we need to? That's the goal. The goal isn't about which organization had the best program. The goal is to make sure that we're talking to voters and we're turning them out, and that they're voting on election day, right? And so again, we have to think really clearly and get really strategic about how we utilize our resources, both manpower and money, in the state of Florida. And so again, kind of thinking about takeaways. What does this mean? Okay, so we failed at mobilization, we failed at spending our money. And so what does that mean? So we identified the problem. What are the solutions? And I'm of the opinion that Florida isn't lacking resources. I think we have great talent when it comes to staffers and organizers and volunteers. And quite honestly, we don't lack for money. It is interesting because a lot of folks say, we're running out of money in the state of Florida when it comes to supporting Democratic causes. I don't think that is the case. My issue is, how do we create an effective plan that is collaborative, that works for all of us, right? And I think that starts with better leadership. I am so excited about our friends, Marcus Dixon, who is now the executive director of the Florida Democratic Party, and the new Chair Diaz. But we need to see a plan, right? Like what is the plan to flip Florida blue? What are we going to do in 2022? I'm sure that you all get the same text messages and Twitter feeds and Facebooks about rumors of who's going to run for governor, who's going to run for U.S. Senate to get rid of Rubio. And we need to see a plan of what that looks like, because 2022, that election isn't coming. It's here, y'all. We're in full swing of the 22 election cycle. And that means that we have to work right now to start building relationships with voters so that they know who we're supporting as Democrats, and that they are making a plan to go out and vote. Even though it's next year, again, that election is now, and we need to start putting our efforts behind that. I think also, we've had this conversation again about who's going to be our Stacey Abrams. Well, there are lots of people of color in this state, particularly Black women, who have been doing this work, folks that I look up to, that we need to create space for them to lead in our party. And right now that currently doesn't exist. How do we get talented folks who reflect the diversity of our state into these senior leadership positions? And I think that's really going to shift how strategy comes about from our party, and how we continue to see wins up and down the ballot. A lot of folks talk about this consulting class, the folks who keep getting these contracts, who take these races and we lose, and we keep doing the same thing expecting different results. Again, we have to get folks who come from groups like this, grassroots groups like Organized Florida, which is now Florida Rising, and help them matriculate through the process of getting into these senior leadership roles, because those relationships on the ground are important to help lead and drive strategy for the party. So we can kind of ruminate for another 12 months on why we lost and again what the problem is. But I want us to get real super clear on what the impact of this loss means, right? So we know, so we're celebrating, we have President Biden in the White House, but what does that mean for Florida? We lost 5 state House seats in November. So we are closer to a super majority right now because of the 5 Democrats who did not return back to the Florida legislature in the House. That is super problematic. I'm not sure if y'all are keeping up with what's happening in Tallahassee. Session started last week. It is absolutely atrocious what is going on. How many of y'all are familiar with the protest bill, House Bill 1, the anti-protest bill? So just to kind of give folks a 60-second summary on what that is. Last year, after George Floyd was murdered by a police officer, civil unrest occurred and started happening across our country. Folks were protesting. And in our state, right after those summer protests, Governor Desantis decided that he wanted to put forth legislation that criminalized folks' right to peacefully protest and make an argument for systemic injustice being capped at its knees, and that there is legislative reform when it comes to police brutality in the state of Florida. His proposal is far-reaching. It isn't, quite honestly, I think the Republicans say it all the time, is government overreach. That's exactly what it is. And a clear example of that is there was a protest in Tallahassee where a driver drove through that protest and was not criminalized for that. I think he actually hit a protester with his vehicle. And so that bill would allow that and things like that to happen for folks who, just casually run folks over with their vehicle. They will not be criminalized for doing that at the site of a protest. This is problematic. And because, again, that we are in a posture of being in a super minority in the Florida House, that bill is fast tracking through the process so quickly that we can't, as Democrats, really do anything. And again, it's because of this is a direct result of our kind of lack of mobilization and organizing during the election. Another example of that is the COVID liability bill. And, there's debates on whether or not what that bill should be doing in terms of supporting businesses and small business owners. But I think what's problematic is our very own Representative Driscoll put forth an amendment on that bill that would protect frontline workers, right? So we talk about protecting them and how grateful we are for frontline workers during this pandemic, like teachers and our public safety officers, the restaurant workers. But that bill this amendment that would have protected them and ensured liability, lack of liability for these folks failed along party lines, which is problematic, right? Like, how do we say that we support folks like this and say that on Twitter and on social media, but when it's time to actually act and produce policy that would demonstrate our support for these folks, we don't do it, we cowered at the idea. And again, that's another bill. They've been in session a week that has already gone and matriculated through a committee process, gone to the floor for a vote, again, that failed along party lines. A direct result of the election by losing 5 Democrats and not picking up additional seats. This is why this work we do and my kind of constant preaching of relational year-round organizing is so very important, y'all, because it has a direct impact on the policy-making process. Here's yet another example why Tallahassee is horrible and we need to elect more Democrats. Today in the legislature, they discussed a bill relative to THC caps. And they were trying to limit THC relative to medicinal marijuana and its distribution in the state of Florida. And we have this conversation again all the time about equity, equitable access, equitable policy making. And in an example of that, Representative Rayner in committee today asked specifically that sickle cell be included as a disease relative to where this cap won't be permissible to it. And that amendment wasn't even heard in committee, right? So and as many of us know, sickle cell impacts disparately African-American folks, right? And so how are we ensuring that we're doing equitable policy making if we won't even hear an amendment that would help the health and impact the health of Black and brown folks in the state of Florida. This is problematic. And the folks on the other side of the aisle don't give a damn, excuse my language, but they don't care about us. And they're doing whatever they can to retain power and retain the coffers that they have, their campaign coffers, making sure those are stacked instead of caring about folks like you and me. And so this is, again, just another example. Tell you one last example of why we have to make sure we get Democrats back into the state house and in the state legislature. There was it's called Fair and Just Police Reform. It's a legislative package that I think it includes almost 80 bills put together by House Democrats to specifically address the concerns that came out of last summer's protests, right? Having this conversation about how do we hold police officers accountable? How do we reimagine policing? How do we reform police budgets, right? All of these ideas were taken into consideration by Democrats across the state and produced in this legislative package. Ask me how many bills have been heard in committee. Precisely. Precisely. And so if we want to continue to demonstrate why it's important to elect Democrats, I just gave you 5 examples of really bad bills that impact our daily lives, right? Y'all know this public policy making process isn't some esoteric issue that we can't wrap our heads around. They impact everyday quality of life issues. And that's why we have to keep doing what we can to organize, to be prepared, and make sure folks like Mr. H get to Tallahassee to make sure that we have him in the Florida legislature to push back on these bad bills. It's not enough to pass good bills, but we have to stop them from their overreach and what they're doing to really hurt everyday Floridians. Now, Ron DeSantis. Anybody on this call want to run against Ron DeSantis? I will open a political committee today. Seriously, I will take anybody at this point because it is absolutely ridiculous what he is doing. So think about this, y'all. We have almost a supermajority in the Florida legislature. We have a governor who cares only about himself and his political career. And then the Florida Supreme Court is stacked with appointees by Governor DeSantis. We are screwed. We are. And I'm trying to emphasize the severity of this, and hopefully as a call to action of how much work that needs to get done. This is a big lift, y'all. And Ron DeSantis, I think, he demonstrated why he didn't need to get elected even before he got elected with that Trump baby book ad. Y'all remember that when he read the Build a Wall book to his kids in that campaign ad? I think that was demonstrative that he should not serve in elective office. But folks, chose otherwise, and he's elected. And now we see literally every day there's a headline that further demonstrates that he certainly should not get reelected. And I think one that everyone on this call knows is about his vaccine distribution plan, or the lack thereof, right? What governor goes to a community in Tampa Bay or across the state or anywhere to say he voluntarily chooses a community with the highest zip codes to pass out the vaccine first? Understanding that working folks, Black and brown folks, low-income folks are the ones who have the most are the highest risk of exposure to COVID-19. That is problematic. And there's been a direct implication of this being tied to his political campaigns, right? Like making sure that his donors are the ones who get the access to the vaccine first. It's not equitable. And again, he's prioritizing partisanship and politics over people. And what's absolutely frustrating is that apparently I saw an article last week that his approval ratings are up. What's happening, y'all? Who are we as a state? What does that say about us? And what does that say about our neighbors, that we are almost complicit in what the governor is doing? I sincerely thought that his failure to lead during this COVID-19 pandemic was gonna write him off. I was like, this is his ticket out of the governor's mansion. But it seems like that the folks on his side are doubling down, and that especially since his friends are getting the vaccine first, and Publix is making significant contributions to his campaign and otherwise, that we need to do some more work to make the case that Governor DeSantis has failed to lead. Another example, his voting legislative proposals. Have y'all seen that? He wants to roll back vote by mail. He wants to take out drop boxes for folks to drop their vote by mail ballots off. He's trying to eliminate some of the early voting sites, specifically the Sunday before Election Day. And we all know that that is traditionally a day that African American voters go and participate in an event called Souls to the Polls. He is deliberately trying to disenfranchise Floridians from democracy. This is not hyperbolic. I need y'all to really understand that this is happening because he knows, folks on the other side of the aisle know that when we organize, when we get our things together, that we win. And that's, again, demonstrative of us putting Joe Biden in the White House and what happened right to our state to the north in Georgia. So they are trying to make sure and preclude us from participating in democracy, because when we get our stuff together, they know that we can win. And so this is why, again, it's super important, y'all, to elect and organize and mobilize year round so that we're making the case to support good Democrats and, again, send good folks to Tallahassee, because we have to stop this. We have to, make sure that folks understand what's at stake. And I think what's super critical here is that, when we think about this idea of hindering our access to vote, how many policy proposals have we passed through the constitutional amendment process? Think about what that means, because since Tallahassee is failing to lead and, make good policy making decisions on our behalf, we as citizens have organized, gotten amendments on the ballot and passed them or defeated them by the 60% threshold that we need. And on quality of life issues like the minimum wage, we're doing that in the Constitution because Tallahassee sucks, right? And so we need to make sure that we are protecting that right to vote on these issues if they're going to continue to prioritize partisanship. And then also, I think what's super incredulous is that he lowered the flags for Rush Limbaugh.
Oh,
okay, great. I was hoping I got that reaction. What are we doing? Who are we portraying ourselves to be as a state to lower the flags of a known bigot who literally got on the airwaves and disparaged people, who talked them down? The things he said about President and First Lady Obama are horrible. He said other incredulous things that I dare not repeat, but what are we saying? Maya Angelou said, if someone shows you who they are, believe them. And again, going back to who he showed us to be even before he got elected, he's someone who is totally fine aligning himself with bigots and, and racists and sexist. And if that's who we want to lead our state, then fine. But I know everyone on this call would agree with me that he's not reflective of who we are and our morals and our values. And that means that we have to do what we need to do to make sure that he does not get back in the governor's mansion in 22. And for certain, I'm going to light a fire under all our butts. There is a rumor going around that, especially if he does get reelected in 22, there is a path to the White House for Ron DeSantis. This is not okay. This is not okay. The power isn't, in big lobbyist pockets or special interests in terms of who gets to decide who a governor is. It's us, it's the voters. And so we have to make sure that folks who, are too busy to hop on these calls, who are super not paying attention to what's going on or only see the fake news on social media, that they understand the severity of our vote and how much power we have in this process. Another person who I specifically dislike, who we need to make sure gets voted out, is Ashley Moody. Of course, that's super personal for me because I worked on Sean Shaw's race for Attorney General in 2018. But think about how complicit our attorney general has been in Governor Desantis's actions, right? He is clearly politicizing the vaccine distribution, and she will not investigate that and hold him accountable. The attorney general is supposed to be the people's lawyer, the state's lawyer, not DeSantis's personal attorney. And that's exactly what she's acting like. And what is she doing? She's, they talk about on the other side taxpayer dollars and misuse of taxpayer dollars. I, for certain, think it is a misuse of taxpayer dollars when she signed on to a lawsuit in Texas trying to invalidate the votes of swing states. What is that? First of all, we lost Florida. We knew that. So why are you jumping into and signing on to a lawsuit that has to do with other states that you aren't a part of and utilizing tax dollars to do it? And I think, so that's problematic. And the second part of that is relative to the point that you're trying to kind of lift up this narrative that the vote about voting insecurity across the country, specifically in the state of Florida. And that just laid the baseline for those voting proposals that I just talked to you about. The other issue is, not sure if you saw in the news that there was a direct line of participation that can be found by Attorney General Moody in the insurrection that happened at the beginning of the year. The Republican Attorney Generals Association, there was participation by leadership in that organization with the folks who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. And Attorney General Moody is a part of that. And there was some conversations, I believe, that the article said that she was a part of that process. What are we doing? We have folks in elected office who are literally supporting the folks who stormed the Capitol and tried to overthrow our government, all in the sake of supporting Donald Trump. We got to do something, y'all. And 2022 is the chance to do it. Last Attorney General Moody screw up of the week is when she decided to file a lawsuit against President Biden, I believe today, because he isn't deporting what she calls illegal aliens, as we know them to be of immigrants to our country, because she doesn't believe that he's doing enough. He's not doing his job as it relates to deportations. Again, misuse of taxpayer dollars. And we have to make sure that we hold them accountable. Again, the attorney general's job is not to sue whoever they feel like it because they, don't agree with their, political policies or political viewpoints. It's to make sure that the laws of the state of Florida are being followed and that the people of Florida are protected, period. And I don't see in any of the things I listed that prioritize us over her own political posturing. So what does this mean? So we can sit here and probably list off another list of 100 things that have gone wrong since November, but that doesn't solve the problem, y'all. The solution, I believe, is to think about new creative ways to flip our state blue. And I think that begins with groups like these. How do we capitalize on the fact that there are 24 people on this call right now? How do we take that and make sure that we are continuously organizing? So, maybe it means that our meetings of clubs and caucuses and grassroots organizations, we get our business handled first 20 minutes blitz through, and then we take the rest of the time for our meetings that are scheduled in phone bank. Right? I am someone who fundamentally believes that we need to organize all the time, year round. And the way we do that, when people ask me, and they're like, so what do you do? How do you phone bank when you're quote unquote not in the middle of an election cycle? Well, I think we are for certain right now. And we make the case, y'all. We call the voter, we help them solve their problem. And when we do that, it's demonstrative of the fact of this is why we need to support Democrats. Or when we call them, ask them what they need, and we can't provide it, we tell them, we can't do this for you because Republicans care more about themselves and lining their own pockets and the pockets of special interests. And that's why we need to elect Democrats. Same thing, guys, is building relationships, having these conversations year round. And so I would charge you guys to really consider that, thinking through ways to as we're gathered, find creative ways right now to have those conversations with folks, whether it be phone banking, get a good script, ask them if maybe they need COVID resources, if they have access to the vaccine. Those conversations go a long way. And when they get their ballot, next year, they're going to remember the conversations that happened this time. And they might even want to get involved just because someone reached out well in advance of the election. So that certainly is something that I would like all of us to do, starting as early as next month, because again, we are in full swing of 2022 and folks need to hear from us and know that we are working to solve their problems. Because quite honestly, y'all, we haven't done it. Republicans have been in power for the last 20 years, over 20 years in the state of Florida. So we just go in again, and say that we're going to, fix our public education system, expand Medicaid, kind of the same Democratic talking points over and over again. Folks are going to say, how are you going to do it? Because you haven't done it in the last 20 years. And so we need to show them on an individual level that we're here to help them, and provide resources for them so they can believe in who we are as a party. Here's another thing. I think we have to make sure that we're supporting folks who are interested in running for local office and helping to build a bench. We have that conversation every 2 years, and Mr. H is nodding his head because it's true, right? I think I tell folks all the time there's three legs to this idea of flipping Florida blue, or this institutional kind of revolution when it comes to the Democratic Party, that I believe it's good candidates, good staff, and good institution, the good party. So for the first time in a long time, beginning in 2018 and even last cycle, we've had really good candidates, folks that people believe in. Scott had many of his students help him. I've never seen East Hillsborough on fire like we did with the comrade of folks who were on the ballot over there. This is really great. But again, we have to get those other two legs of this revolutionary act done too. We have to have good staff. And it's hard being a staffer, in this state, and you continuously lose. We lose good talent because our state doesn't create jobs because we don't win and we don't get elected, and so there's no jobs to have on the other side, or after the election cycle. And so we have to make sure that we're retaining good staffers who know how to win and know how to organize in their own communities, right? So how are we supporting folks who are organized in Brandon, organized in Valrico to eventually either manage a campaign out there or run for office themselves? And then that third leg is, again, the institution. What is the party doing from the state level, nationally, even down, on the county level and the clubs and caucuses, to make sure that we are doing direct voter contact year round? And again, all we need is access to van and our cell phones, and we can have those conversations with folks right now, because they're looking for leadership. And unfortunately, again, Desantis has proven that he is unfit to lead our state, and we need to provide a good alternative. And we might not know who that person is right now, who's going to be at the top of our ticket, but they're going to see that leadership is coming from the Democratic Party. So when they get that ballot, they're going to vote Dem up and down the ballot. And so we have to be supportive of that. There's lots of big things coming out of our democratic institutions and progressive policy making groups that I'm really excited about. There might be some, voting and democracy constitutional amendments coming out that we should be organizing around, just to make sure that we're building an electorate that can get us across the finish line on election day. Again, our Democrats are working hard to stop some of these bad bills in Tallahassee, but it almost seems inevitable that they're going to pass. So that means that, in addition to calling our neighbors and our friends and organizing them, we need to call our legislators, but y'all know that. And it's not enough to just call our Democratic legislators. Call McClure, call Beltran, call those folks and let them know about how terrible their vote is, right? I think it was McClure who sponsored the COVID liability bill. We should be banging down and filling up his voicemails and tweeting him like crazy, because our voices are amplified when all of us are driving a similar message to these electeds. And once they hear this echo chamber of how terrible we think they are, it causes some paranoia for these folks. They begin to question whether or not they have this kind of unilateral power that they think they have. And we need to do that. We need to put the Republicans on notice that we're paying attention, that were working hard and that were coming for their seats in 2022. So I am, I will definitely take questions at this point, and that's all I wanted to do was rant and rave and get us to start working now, because we have to. It is too it's too delicate of a moment. I think for me, it kind of reinforced today how important this work is. Hearing that amendment that Representative Rayner put forward about sickle cell. My godfather passed away from sickle cell a couple years ago, and so to have that direct, to have a member look and say that no, that wouldn't be included, and I know someone who was directly impacted by that is heartbreaking, and just motivated me to get back up and fight another day, because we all know somebody who's directly impacted by the policies they're pushing out in Tallahassee. So uh, that's it. That's all I got right now. But I'm happy to answer any questions if folks have them.
Okay, Maya, thank you so much. That was very informative. And I must say, I agree with you 1,000% on every single thing that you said. And I also will say that the group that's on this Zoom call are the most active members we have. And all of us have been involved in some way or another, whether it's been phone banking, actual door-to-door canvassing, writing postcards, fundraising, all kinds of, we attend fundraisers, we are very active as a group. So that I will say. But you're right when we talk about leadership, or lack of, or a change of in the Democratic Party. And so it starts from the DNC, the Democratic National. Okay, so national feeds the states. But so what are they doing? Are they feeding us the right stuff? Or are we so disorganized going downhill that we're all over the place, and there's no single message, there's no single way that we all should be following the same method of getting new voters or getting our message through? So where does the fault lie?
I think it lies, Liz, that's a great question. Definitely at a national level, but specifically with our state. There was some issues around what the messaging was last cycle, specifically in South Florida, with this message around socialism. And some of our Democratic leaders right now are trying to combat that already. But we don't have a messaging deck that relates to people. Again, we kind of spit out and regurgitate these kind of top value points in our party about public education, good health care, access to quality transportation, all that good stuff. And that's great. But what does that mean to a specific voter? How do we make that specific to different communities, right? Because East Tampa has different needs than Valrico. And, Ruskin has different needs than Town and Country. And so it doesn't mean that we have to pivot who we are or what our platform is, but how do we make it specific, right? So in Town and Country, I think a message about public education means how do we ensure funding, right? Like, how do we make sure that we are bringing home or having the legislature fully fund about our public education? But maybe in Valrico, that means how do we make sure that there's sidewalks to make sure your kids can walk safely to school, right? It's not saying, we're not pivoting from the conversation about education. We're just making it specific to what folks face every day, so they can relate to it and understand or have a why of why they're voting for Democrats on the ballot. And so to your other question about where do we start? How do we move forward? I think, quite honestly, we can't wait for the state party or the national party to tell us where we go. And so that's why I think it's important for us to start having these conversations, right? And talking to voters. So if you all hear while you're phone banking that folks maybe don't want to talk about the vaccine, maybe they want to talk about the insurrection for one, whatever. So you're hearing this, you're like, dang, our script tells us to ask them about the vaccine distribution, but everybody wants to talk about the insurrection. Like, that is informative, right? Like, that means that should be a messaging point that we are talking about specifically, in East Hillsborough, or maybe, folks are talking about that across the state. But I think these grassroots organizing relationships help develop messaging, not necessarily the other way around, right? Like, messaging funneling down doesn't always work, and we've seen that. I think that is very clear about, what happened in November. So it's what's happening with groups like this, the conversations that we're holding, and we're flagging that up the poll to say, this is what we're hearing on the ground. This is what folks want solutions to, and this is what we should act on.
Okay, that makes sense. So there isn't, I mean, we have our basic values, but messaging would depend on your demographic.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So you also touched on running for office, and a big part of getting the message across for Democrats is fine, but we have to have decent candidates.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know myself. Maybe other people do know that how the decisions are made with the DCCC or any of those organizations to find and groom the proper candidates that are going to resonate with the voters.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, I remember when Biden was running for president, compared to some of the other people, especially Mayor Pete. Wow, you had, the old man and the young kid. And so, so who appeals to who? And then you've got the progressives, and then you've got the moderates. So we are a diverse party. I mean, just because we are diverse people. And so we need to be able to find candidates that are worthwhile supporting. Here's an example of someone who was running, was what was his name? Running it, that took Adams, what was his name? Cohn, yeah. And we didn't feel that he was really a great candidate. We didn't really see, he was a bunch of negative vibes. And so, it's hard to support candidates that we don't feel a connection to. You can say you're moderate or progressive, but the candidate themselves has to be appealing to the party and even independents. And so, I mean, I don't know who's in charge of all of that, if you are involved in that yourself, but how can that be better? How can grooming of candidates be better?
Liz, you just said a mouthful, and I wish, it is recording. I'm gonna take that clip and show all the powers that be that, folks on the ground have these concerns, because you're absolutely spot on. And there is a consortium of groups like Roofs List and the party and SEIU, all these groups on our side that kind of do their due diligence to recruit candidates. But to your latter point about how do we demonstrate or help groom candidates from the community that can resonate, that's what it means to build a bench, right? So how do we get, a Mr. H, if Brandon or Valrico was a city, like how do we get him on the city council, and then eventually on the county commission? And so then when the party tries to come down and recruit someone who hasn't been involved, we say, we got Mr. H right here. You know what I mean? Like, he knows this community, he's served. And that's what that means. We have to cultivate candidates of our own who've been involved in these spaces, who have these relationships. And so when they seek higher office, we're not reinventing the wheel, right? Every 2 years, every 4 years, that's what we do as Democrats. We find somebody to run who probably wasn't even thinking about it. We build this infrastructure, probably one that wasn't as sophisticated as we needed to. They lose, everything shuts down, and we literally do it all over again. That's not sustainable. And again, it doesn't help move the needle, right? Like it goes back to the point of relational organizing. There's folks who are, again, looking for leadership, and that means that that we need to recruit folks. And so, Mr. H, I see your chat comment, and you're right. It is tough because we only have 3 municipalities in Hillsborough County. But how do we create that pathway? How do we get Mr. H to be on appointment boards, right? So how do we get him to serve on the Heart Board, or all these other things that demonstrate his public service? So again, we have a base of folks that we can say that they have the experience, that we have a cadre of candidates who are ready to rock and roll.
Can we as a community sort of nominate people or push their name out to the proper folks?
Absolutely.
We know so-and-so, I think, would be a great commissioner, or so-and-so would be a great state representative. we do have some input, you think?
Absolutely, right. And I think that's demonstrative of showing your support, right? Like these programs like Roost List and House Victory and Senate Victory, all these folks who have all this money that decide where and how they're going to spend their money. They look at a couple of things. What's their viability as a candidate? Do they have a path to victory? And Mr. H is on the next screen, but I would love to see his face right now as I say those kind of triggering words, because it's true. They want to know what the viability of a candidate means is, and what does that mean? That means how much money have they raised, and what does their political relationships look like? And so what that means for us is all the things that y'all do, the fundraising, donating to candidates like this to show that they have the resources to win. And then the other thing is, how do we demonstrate via social media, via support at events, things like that, that there is a groundswell around the candidate of our choice? That makes a difference, because if these folks kind of fly in from Tallahassee and other parts of the state, and it's crickets around these different candidates, they're definitely not going to invest and make the race a priority. But we have to show that we are going to support this person and see them over the finish line with the help of their resources too.
Okay. So we have another question. Do you know if we have any qualified candidates that are eager to run against Desantis?
So that's okay. So let's chat. I think someone had a beer earlier. I wish I had one right now. So there are lots of names kind of swirling around, right? So I actually want to open it up to y'all. Who have y'all heard? Who do y'all want? And let's talk about that for a little minute.
I know Nikki Fried has her hand in it. I'm not so sure she's the right one myself. Gwen Graham, I've heard her name floating again. I don't think she's the right one because she had her chance there. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard, who else? Anybody else?
Charlie Crist.
Oh, Charlie Crist, yeah.
What do you think of that, Maya? You think?
Well, there's some other names out there too. I was wondering if they were going to pop up, like Congresswoman Demings, Congresswoman Murphy, both from Orlando. Who else? There was another name I can't think of right now. But
I would love to see Demings run.
Representative Escamani is rumored to run for governor. So there's
I love her. I love her.
Lots of names swirling right now. So I think
girls.
Yeah.
That's right.
It was my favorite Elvis movie, but if we're going to be smart, I'm telling you, we got to think about more than which woman is our guy.
That's right.
Yeah, so all of those names are kind of circulating right now.
Can I say something that isn't quite so hateful? One of the things that's happened to me in the balloting area when I've walked in to cast a vote are these elected offices, and they are elected because they're on the ballot, but they are for things like Swift Mud. I can't remember other things that might be association type entities, but they appear on a ballot that I'm supposed to be filling out. Many times, because that's what I was taught to do when I was in the FFA and in my youth, many times I leave those offices blank because I feel like the people that have more expertise than me in the electorate should be making those decisions instead of me picking out the person with the worst sounding name or the funniest name or something. I think that those offices, I know of fair-minded environmental engineers that have an interest in seeing that we have good policy, environmental policy and water policy in the state of Florida, which is vital, folks, that would do good on an entity like that. And in turn, there's no danger of a shortage of lawyers in the state legislatures. We can look for other professions to fill those ranks. People that are pharmacists, even MDs. There's a lot of conscientious doctors out there. And another thing is this idea of getting a high school student to show an interest in politics, having him graduate from college and 9 minutes later run for a local office, and then that guy in a few years being referred to as a career politician. I think some people we can borrow them from the private sector for a little while, bearing in mind that this is supposed to be public service. They are supposed to sacrifice to hold that office. They're doing it for the greater good, not just to further their very immediate career. I believe that there are folks out there that are in journalism. They're all over the place that could be talked to by groups like ours and maybe accumulations of groups like ours that could be brought into this fold.
So true. That is so true.
I think
believe we're missing out on a lot of opportunity for a lot of people.
We absolutely need more of the average person running for these offices, not just the lawyers.
Absolutely. I think there are no teachers in the legislature right now. None out of 160. There was a doctor running in Gainesville, Kaiser Enneking. I think she would be the only MD, but she lost that race. So we're definitely missing the diversity of occupations. And so when all these folks who are lawyers have all this money and worth $1 million are having a conversation or debating the minimum wage, and especially debating the implementation of a constitutional amendment that we passed, how out of touch are these people? How out of touch are they to kind of make these decisions about who should have access to making $15 an hour? And they don't understand that struggle, especially in present day. And then Donnie, you raised a good point that I wanted to circle back on about these positions that are on the ballot that folks don't know about in terms of like special districts, CDDs, soil and water. All of those kind of go back to this idea of building a bench. How to, if you're on the ballot to represent your homeowners association, which is, kind of the interchangeable name for special districts and CDDs and all that good stuff. How do you build relationships with the folks in your community to then run for higher office? That is certainly a way to do that, especially in unincorporated Hillsborough County.
I also think that some people who are not politically inclined and then decide to run and maybe win are surprised that of all of the politics in politics, when they finally get the seat and you see how bureaucratic everything becomes, and it's so overdone that you never get your point across. And that can dishearten some people. I remember Adam Hattersley was never involved in politics, and he got there and he said, it's like high school because you have to do all these write this thing, and then you have to go through this, and everybody's in a clique and all, and it's just ridiculous. The hoops that you have to go through to pass, or you write a bill or get it co-sponsored. And I think that scares people. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. And so one of our questions here is, how do we connect to the 18 and 21-year-olds? Well, my answer to that is that the schools need to go back to teaching civics again and getting more involved in political discussion to get people, young people involved. No one, there's so many young people that I talk to that don't even want to hear it. They don't want to be bothered. They don't understand it. And let's move on. When is the next party? So and I don't even think social media is the answer anymore. Facebook's for old people. Instagram's all about pictures, and Twitter is just for business. So I don't even know the answer to that. Maybe you do. You're younger than me. But I think social media isn't even the answer anymore for young people. I think it's schools. And Mr. H can verify that too. I'm sure he agrees with me.
I know. How do I get him back on the first page? I wish.
I'm here. I'll talk.
I know, it's like two things.
Go ahead, talk.
Okay, there you are. All right, perfect. So, but feel free to hop in. I have some thoughts, Mr. H.
Yeah, Liz, we teach civics to every single middle school student by law, and then we test them. And then in high school they get U.S. government. The apathy from the 18 to 21 crowd, I don't think exceeds anything we find in the 21 plus crowd. They just have different issues that are important to them. Out here in the Fishhawk area, we had either recent grads or high schoolers who organized their own Black Lives Matter protest in Fishhawk and drew about 200 people. And they had safety marshals and they're engaged. There's March for Our Lives. I'm still in touch with some students who I met when they're in high school here in Hillsborough, and now they're up in Tallahassee testifying against House Bill 1 and leading the way for that. So I think there's been a dumbing down of the conversation, and I think that's definitely something that the Republicans have encouraged, seeding doubt. Every time I hear we need to teach civics in schools, I've been teaching it for 8 years. We haven't. That's actually a Republican messaging point to make it look like they're more involved than, yeah. The kids are involved. They've managed my campaign. They want to do great things. We just have to speak to their issues.
That is a great segue. And I think that it's about issues, y'all. And I apologize for my dog. So he's a 13-pound Chihuahua who thinks he is 100 pounds. So, and the defender of our house. So, but anywho, it's about issues, right? For the first time in a long time, we have both houses, both chambers in Congress and the White House. And we are still having this idea about bipartisanship. Republicans didn't care about bipartisanship when they were in power. And so what we are saying that we need to work across the aisle to pass these policy points. One, I believe, no, we don't, because especially if we're doing it to support everyday and working Americans across the country. But young people are looking for us to back what we're saying with action. We keep talking about canceling student loan debt. We have the power to do it, and we haven't done it yet. We keep talking about raising the federal minimum wage. We have the power to do it, and we haven't done yet. So young people want us to lead with action and not just our words. And until we do that, it's going to be problematic. It doesn't matter, I think, what medium we try to talk to 18-year-olds. And if we have nothing to say, it doesn't matter what that medium is, right? If we're just saying what we're going to do, and again, we have the power to do that, especially on the federal level, we have to show up and we have to do that to say that we're serious about who we are. Or it basically is a slap in the face to all the work that Georgia did, all the work that we did to help support Georgia to, flip and have and get the Senate to where we need it to be. Why did we do all that work if we're not going to do what we said, right? I think an example is, we passed the relief package that's coming out, and that's great. We did that because we elected Ossoff, or Georgia elected Ossoff and Reverend Warnock. But we have to do more of that to show what it means to have Democrats elected and to have the majority. So Mr. H is right. I think the second thing is, how are we making it easier for folks, especially young folks, to access democracy? Are we, and I think our supervisor of elections does a really good job of that. He goes to high schools and registers voters early. I think you can pre-register beginning at the age of 16. So as soon as they turn 18, they get a voter registration card in the mail. All of that is great and is really in the spirit of what we believe as Democrats, this idea of automatic voter registration, right? Like that is an example of that. But we have to continue to support efforts like that, expand efforts like that, that make access to democracy easier, right? Like we all know how much of a burden it is to go vote. Imagine an 18-year-old kid who, has been partying all weekend or is away at college. How do we make it easier for them to cast a ballot? And especially in light of the fact that, again, our legislators and our governor wants to make it harder, if not eviscerate, access to vote by mail. So again, we have to demonstrate and lead as Democrats when we have opportunities to do that, to show that we mean what we say.
Okay, just a couple more quick questions. I guess regarding primaries. Some people want to know why we have multiple Dems running for an office in one area, but none in another area. Our last candidate for governor won the primary with 30% plus of the vote, we need a better way to run primaries. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I have lots of thoughts. I participated in, in the amendment to defeat Amendment 3, right? That would have completely changed our primary process. And I specifically to the point about why do we have multiple Democrats running in one area and none in others is gerrymandering, right? Like, how do you have access to, there's some seats that make it absolutely great. There's a clear path and a majority seat for a Democrat to win. But in areas like District 57 and 58, like it's harder. And so who wants to take on that lift? And thank God for Mr. H for doing it multiple times to make create a path for a Democrat to win there. So it's about convenience most times when that happens. But again, that's why the work of organizing is important. If we, have conversations with folks and register them, and we see in 6 months that this district is trending more blue, there's a compelling case to make here about a path to victory, right? But that means that we have to do the work to do it. We can't wait to find a candidate to make the district more blue. We can do that on our own by engaging, registering, and organizing folks throughout the year, and not just, for a specific candidate campaign.
Yeah, I think we need a Stacey Abrams here. I mean, if they did it in Georgia, we could do it here. We just need more people out there banging the drum. Last question, and then you can go home. Oh, you are home.
I am.
So who are you going to be campaigning for this next one? Do you have any favorites coming up that you want to be involved with?
Oh, for at the top of the ticket. So I am excited about the idea of a Val Demings. I think that would be super exciting. She was on the short list of VP. I think she has a really great presence. I've heard her speak a few times at different Democratic events across the state. So I'd be interested in seeing how that pans out. I think Stephanie Murphy is an interesting candidate too. I think that would be interesting to watch her kind of go through a statewide primary process. And I think I would be on anybody's team to retire Rubio. Even if it's my literal dog, Gino, like I would be on anybody's campaign to retire Rubio because he is horrible. And I think also, even though it's not in our region, we should be supporting and helping build Democratic power in the Panhandle, because Matt Gaetz needs to be stopped. Matt Gaetz has continued to, suck up to Trump and Desantis. And folks, again, he kind of moves around in the Panhandle unilaterally, thinking that he cannot be challenged. But again, those counties, those small counties, Baker County, Jackson County, Wakulla County, all those small little places have folks in there who have issues, and we need to talk to them about that and demonstrate why Democrats are better to lead on their issues. And I'm sure Matt Gaetz could be challenged and potentially not get reelected because of that, and because he is just the most pompous jerk in the state of Florida. So, and we can do that, and that's what I keep trying to underscore, is that we don't have to wait on a Stacey Abrams. We can do it. We can build this right here on Zoom with 22 participants. By all of us, like I said, with a van account and some cell phones.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Thank you, Maya. And with that, Mr. H, I hear that Mike Owen is planning on running for District 4. And so we need somebody to step up to the plate in District 4 in the County Commission. Hint, hint. He's being quiet. He's not listening to me.
Now, I'm actually not that well versed at county politics as much as education and statewide now after running, but we do need to find someone to go up against him.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised if Melissa Snively throws her hat in the ring too.
Yeah, I've heard rumors. I do business with her, and she's ready to move up in the world.
Yeah.
So bad news. Those are two bad news. We need somebody, we need to find somebody and get behind them for our county's sake, District 4. So Maya, that was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on board and telling us, you know, we've learned an awful lot. And going to get our postcards going back and get on those phone banks, get some van, listings going for our members. And we need to start working.
That's
Just
right.
to say hello to fellow Democrats. That's the important thing, just to let them know that we're here. And there's clubs, and there's a club for everyone. If you want to meet in the afternoon, there's one there. There's our one at night, and there's women's clubs. We need a men's club. Anybody have a men's club? Yeah.
Sarah's like making a note. I'm gonna jot that down.
Yeah, the men's club is called the Republican Party of Florida.
No.
I'm on 60 in Tampa.
But anyway, so into our business meeting, the secretarial report was sent out. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? We vote on that and we discuss our treasurer's report in the board meetings. And we still have some money. Bettina, where'd you go? Recipes.
Before I start, I want to know what Sarah was cutting with that big knife.
Matthew.
Corned beef? What is that? Potatoes. I kept watching. I'm like, what is she using that large knife for?
I'm making some chicken tandoori with just assorted vegetables, eggplant, cauliflower.
Hey, would you just chat your address in while I talk, please?
Oh, well, no, and not only that, but Sarah, we need recipes for our cookbook.
Sarah
And
has sent them to me. Sarah sent me 10.
yeah.
So for everybody else, now that Donna said that, I think pretty much most of the people on this call have sent me recipes. We need more. I've got a total of about 75 to 80. We want like 200. We want this book to be really thick.
Bettina,
So,
is there a
although most of
recipe?
you have given me recipes. Tell your friends, tell the people you talk to. We want more recipes. I want to be able to have sections that are dessert, appetizers, main meals, one dish wonders, whatever we can put in there. And my little fingers are typing, but I have nobody to give it to if I don't put it all together with 200 plus. So
Well,
my
This is our
goal
fundraiser.
200, I'll be happy to get 200. What, Donna?
Well, Bettina, this is Reed. You also need a bread section. So I've already sent you my simplest bread recipe. So I'll send you a bunch more.
Okay, now Reed, did you send me a recipe?
I did a nut bread recipe that my mother taught me. It was the first thing I made. It's a quick bread. It uses baking powder rather than yeast. And
Okay,
it's
I'm
the
just
first
doing a
recipe I
favor.
gave my wife, and my wife and I just turned 40th anniversary about 2 weeks ago. So
Happy anniversary.
I courted my wife with that nut bread recipe I sent you.
Did you put recipe in the subject? Because I don't remember your name.
All right, I'll resend it, but I
Resend it and
definitely
put
sent it to you.
Definitely put recipe in the subject. I get probably 200 or 300 emails a day from all kinds of people and stores. So I'll miss it if you don't. So if
All
you
right,
appreciate
I've
it.
got some other bread recipes, but yeah, I'll send you some.
Okay, that's awesome. And for anybody else that hasn't, please send me whatever you have. I'm really trying to make this book good so that when this pandemic is over, we can do a fundraiser and we can push this cookbook.
Yeah,
And was that recipe in my cookbook, Sarah?
No, this is a new one. I cheated on this one. I got a jar of tandoori sauce.
That's okay. We take.
You should see the recipes that I sent her.
Yeah, you don't want to look at
Bisquick.
Donna's. I'm afraid
Oh,
to
yeah.
even put her name on them.
I put Bisquick, on anything easy. That's my
Donna's
recipe.
is open the can by turning the can open, turn the can upside down. We love her anyway.
Good. I'll definitely send you the recipe.
Okay, thank
And
you.
any others, because I know you love to cook. Ricky Bauman is on this call, and I know she loves to cook too. So let's get some recipes in. It's going to
I
be,
heard that, Donna.
I know you did.
I heard that.
Newly elected Ricky Bauman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So let's get this going. You know, hopefully by the time that we're able to meet in person, we can definitely we can sell cookbooks to our friends. You know, who knows? Yes, absolutely. I'll buy a couple, maybe more. So, Sarah, is there anything going on with the HDEC that we should be told about?
Spring fling,
No, I think you guys are kind of up to speed.
spring fling, no?
A spring fling sponsorship, right?
Right.
So I'm assuming you guys heard the whole story with the live event, but I mean, within days we sold out. We only had room for 250 live tickets. So we held on to as many as we could at the last minute when we realized that they were going like hotcakes, and we held on to a handful of them for each club and caucus to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to participate in the live event. But that was really all we had left. We do have, if you have more than just the 4 people that want to attend, we're also doing a virtual event that's going to be running concurrently with the live event. And the presentation of the virtual event will be the speakers that are at the live event. And at this point, I think we have lined up Charlie Crist, Michelle Rayner, and Anna Escamani, who are going to be speakers. So Ella Coffee is organizing the live event. I'm organizing the virtual event. So I'm planning on doing something kind of cool for you guys so that it's not, you know, I know we're all really sick of Zoom and everybody wants to get together, but I'll try to make it worth your while. So if you didn't get the virtual event too.
How much does the virtual event cost?
46 for our 46th president.
Okay. So, I mean, it's inexpensive. It's still a fundraiser. And for $46, you get to listen to a wonderful, some wonderful speakers. I cannot attend because I've got other things already planned for that day, but it's May 1st.
Yep.
And where in the in-person is going to be where?
That's at the Sale Plaza, right next to the convention center.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in between the convention center and Jackson's.
Right.
So yeah, it'll be fun. We're going to use Lunch Pool for the virtual event, so you'll still get the opportunity to socialize with people. If any of y'all came to, I know some of you came to the Kennedy King event we had last year and the Spring Fling we had last year, those used Lunch Pool, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty neat for, you know, being limited to staying home and doing this virtually. Lunch Pool's a pretty good option. It's better than Zoom.
That it is. I had fun jumping into different rooms and going upstairs and coming downstairs. That was fun.
That was neat.
That was fun. Any questions for Sarah on that? The club is going to be sponsoring. I know Chris and Susan are going to be going for sure. I got to get the banner to you.
I was wondering about parking.
Sarah.
Parking, the convention center does have parking. I couldn't give you the specifics of it, but if you Google the convention center, there's a parking section. I think I'm not sure if we got the ticket page back up on the website yet. We had to take it down for a second because the tickets were just selling too fast. We couldn't keep up. But there is, if you look through the details of the event on our website, there is a link to parking, and there's several different parking garages and parking lots that are associated with the convention center. So, sorry, that was kind of a roundabout answer, not a really good one.
No, I can get it from there. If you say the convention's got parking.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, she is still the secretary of the DEC, and she's a hard worker. She does so much for our Hillsborough County Democratic Party, and we do appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on our Zoom calls too.
Guys,
So, as you all know, our membership dues are still due. If you haven't paid, pay up. And Mr. H, you had said something, you sent me something about a legislative committee or something. You want to elaborate on that? Collaborate.
Yeah, sure. I'm also a member of the South Shore Dems, and I'm on their board as their legislative director. So during the session, we've been getting together on Fridays. There's like a little subcommittee that meets, and I've been watching the legislation, and I put together a list of calls to action on the bad bills that are up there. I'd love to have calls to action on good bills, but they're all kind of like what Maya said, with Democrats being in a super minority. None of our bills are getting heard. I'm more than happy to share that with East Hillsborough Dems, and then we even had some training at our last meeting about where to find all the legislators, all the committees, how to call them, and how to stop this bad legislation that's coming through the Florida legislature this session.
Yeah, I get all of the bills, and let me tell you, I bite my nails. I have no nails left. Seriously, they're bad. The auto glass one is okay. It is okay, but I don't think it's going to pass. And they're going after notaries. I mean, if just about any line of work that you're in, they're going after you. It's crazy. So is there any way that you can send me that? I would like to take that up with our board. I think that we need a legislative as well as a legislative here in our district, somebody to keep track of what our county commission and city council are doing. Because I think it's important that we know and we keep each other informed. I know I do, but I'd rather have somebody else on board too. Or maybe we can work together with South Shore, and because I know it's hard to do that. So let's talk.
Yeah, I could send you what I put together every Friday, and it's a short meeting. If there's anyone in East Hillsborough Dems, I'm sure if you wanted to participate, it's normally a short Zoom call at 11:30 to go over what happened in the past week, and then I type it up and send it out, and I can share that with you, Donna.
I'd appreciate
so that
it.
you can share it with everyone else.
I
But
would
if
love
you're
it.
interested, just reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat, but it's scott.hotenstien@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. I think that's a great idea, and just goes along with how we need to work closer with our candidates and our elected officials. Mr. Newitt.
Hey, how are you doing? I appreciate you giving me a second. I've been thinking a lot about starting a small business caucus where, we try to compete with the Republicans a little bit, like at the chambers and that kind of stuff. Do you think that deserves any attention at all?
The chambers are made up of our chambers out in this district, in this area, are mostly small businesses.
Right.
So I'm not sure where you would be going. I'm a member of all the chambers.
Right, I know.
So I don't know what, I think I'd have to hear more.
As to what?
I think I would have to hear more as to what you're getting to.
Well, we've kind of left the low fruit for the Republicans with all the businesses. And it just seems to me that given the fact that Joe Biden's, mailing money to everybody, and there's a lot of things going on from that perspective, that maybe it's the time that the Democrats stepped up a little bit in the small business section. And it doesn't have to be just called small business. It could be called a business caucus or whatever we'd like it to be. I sent a couple notes to Manny Diaz about it. And it just seems that we shouldn't be giving up that area so easily.
Mhm.
And a lot of times that's where there's a lot of donations too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've seen, I was part of forming a new public education caucus
Yeah.
for at the statewide level 2 years ago. And everyone was like, well, we've got the teachers union, we've got the PTA, we've got all these other organizations in the public education realm. And the key difference in why we formed it is that, the teachers union is supposedly nonpartisan. The PTSA, Parent Teacher Association, is nonpartisan. You do need people who are in the realm, kind of like the Chamber of Commerce, but they're supposed to be nonpartisan, although I think they lean heavily Republican. You need someone with political elbows in the realm in order to message more effectively and to support our candidates. So, like a small business caucus, I think is an excellent idea. That's a huge process that we went through getting that created. I was only part of it. I do know that they have a club and caucus committee at FDP, and they have a checklist of what you need in order to get started. If you'd like to talk more, email me. I put my email, but I think that's a good idea. You would have to start at the statewide level and then move down to the county level.
Scott, we did that before with the Democrat Environmental Caucus, and we got about 20 groups started around the state. And I think that they ended up making some real headway. And I know a lot of the groups, grew to a pretty good size. But then I had some medical problems, and I kind of had to step back a little. So now, I'm thinking again that, if we're gonna, if the Democrats are gonna take a really big position, which, as they give out $2 trillion this week, maybe a lot of people are going to be paying attention. And I just think it might be a good time to step up there a little bit and try to move over some low hanging fruit,
Sarah has her hand up.
I was just going to say to Mike Newitt, you might want to reach out to Russ Kahn. He can help get a new club and caucus started. That's kind of his thing.
For Hillsborough County.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And we certainly will. I wanted to see if we could get started on the state level. So I sent a couple of messages to some people there who I've worked with in the past. And I think that it would make some sense. And, there's not much of an opportunity right now with the chambers and things to put forward what I would consider to be more democratic issues. The Republicans have
Most of
kind
the
of felt like that
chambers-
was their space,
Most of the chambers don't really get involved in politics. They'll let them speak, but they try to stay away. A lot of business owners, try to stay away from politics too, because their beliefs could affect their business in the long run.
I would
So-
appreciate that. I do know that as $2 trillion starts being given away in the next week or two, a lot of businesses are probably going to want to know more about what they can do to get their arms around some of that revenue. And it would just seem to me that'd be a nice time to start a list and start maybe finding out who would be interested, especially it's such a big state, and in a lot of areas, I think you get some natural interest.
Yeah. Well, it's worth checking out. Definitely. Definitely. So do we have anything else? Next month's speaker is going to be Representative Lernan. So, and he'll talk to us more about Tallahassee, you know, and we're still working on, no, May, Liz? Did she drop
Representative
the-
who? Donna, I
Liz, you're on
didn't.
mute.
Andrew Lernan,
Mute.
Oh, learn it.
yeah. And Liz, who is going to be in April? I'm sorry. No, May.
Sorry,
April,
yeah,
May.
I was on mute. We have Janelle Taylor, who is a journalist and a host on WMNF radio. Does a lot of political shows, so she's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
and hear. Yeah.
And after that, maybe we'll be meeting back in person. Who knows? Who knows? So if is there anything else? Anybody have any comments, concerns,
Yeah.
bitches, complaints?
How's Jennifer doing with her beverage?
I think everybody's jealous of you, girl. I don't know. Sarah had a glass of wine there a minute ago. See? Cheers. Oh. So Donnie, it was nice meeting you. I hope you come on next month.
I'll be
And-
here next month, just like I was last month, and it doesn't hurt my feelings at all that you don't remember me from a whole month ago.
Well, because I don't get to see you. You have to learn how to do that video part.
I'm going to be working on it. If I can get any help from anybody to figure this out, but I'll
Hey,
try.
like I said, we can do it one or two ways. I can come to your house if you want.
That'd be great. All I ask is that you wear a mask and wash your hands when you get here.
I can do both of those too. I can walk and chew gum.
I got soap. You gotta bring your own Splenda.
Just, I don't know, my email address is crattledge, really inventive there. My first initial last name at yahoo.com. Just email me and we'll get together.
Okay, man. Thanks for the help. Appreciate it.
So if there is nothing else, remember canned goods to Echo. They're in desperate need. And I don't have anything else. So everybody have a wonderful next couple of weeks, and we will see you soon.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Good night.